The narrative unfolds in the electric atmosphere of an American football stadium, where thousands of spectators have gathered to watch their teams compete on the field below. Among the privileged few sitting in the exclusive VIP section are two individuals whose relationship appears comfortable and familiar, a man named Nicky and his companion Jess. While the game progresses with its usual intensity on the field, Nicky's attention has wandered away from the athletic competition taking place below. Instead, his observant eyes scan the crowd around them, watching the behavior and movements of other spectators with the calculated precision of someone who sees opportunity in human nature. His gaze locks onto an attractive woman rising from her seat and making her way toward the exit. In that moment, an idea sparks in Nicky's mind, and he turns to Jess with a proposition. He suggests they make a small wager on how many people will turn their heads to look at this departing woman as she passes through the stands. The casual nature of this bet seems innocent enough, merely a way to pass time during a lull in the game. A stranger sitting nearby overhears this proposal and expresses interest in participating in the wager himself. This man, who introduces himself as Leon, asks to be included in the betting. Nicky readily agrees to expand their little game to include this newcomer. Each participant contributes $10 to the pot and begins counting the number of people whose eyes follow the attractive woman as she moves through the crowded seating area. When the woman has passed completely out of sight and the counting concludes, they determine that exactly 7 individuals had turned to watch her departure. Among the 3 participants, Jess's prediction came closest to this actual number, making her the winner of this initial round. Leon hands over his share of the money without any hesitation or complaint, his demeanor suggesting that such small losses mean nothing to him. In fact, rather than being discouraged by his defeat, he appears energized by the competition and immediately proposes they begin another round of wagering. This time, the subject of the bet shifts to the football game itself. Leon wants to predict which team will commit the next foul during play. Jess protests that she lacks sufficient knowledge of football to make an informed prediction, but Nicky demonstrates no such reluctance. He jumps enthusiastically into this new wager and commits $1,000 to his prediction. The game resumes, and within moments the referee's whistle pierces the air, his arm extending to signal that a foul has indeed been committed. The team Nicky selected proves to be the guilty party, meaning his prediction was accurate. He collects his winnings and casually pockets the money, his expression showing neither excitement nor relief, just calm acceptance of an expected outcome. Leon's competitive spirit intensifies with this second loss rather than diminishing. He proposes they raise the stakes significantly for the next round, suggesting a wager of $5,000. The new prediction question focuses on whether the player who next receives the ball will choose to pass it to a teammate or attempt to run with it himself. Nicky displays some hesitation at risking such a substantial sum, but after a moment of consideration, he agrees to participate. Leon predicts the player will run while Nicky argues he will pass. When play resumes and the critical moment arrives, the player indeed chooses to run with the ball rather than throw it, meaning Nicky has lost $5,000. He extracts the cash from his wallet and hands it over to Leon, his face showing the first signs of discomfort with the direction this series of bets has taken. Nicky suggests to Jess that perhaps they should leave the stadium and get coffee, hoping to extricate himself from this escalating situation. But Leon refuses to let them depart so easily. He points out that they are sitting in the expensive VIP lounge, clearly indicating they possess significant financial resources. What does $5,000 matter to people of such apparent wealth? He insists they continue with an even larger wager, proposing they bet $10,000 on the next round. After some internal struggle, Nicky agrees to this new bet. The question this time concerns whether a player will successfully complete his next pass attempt or whether the opposing team will intercept it. Nicky predicts the pass will be completed successfully, but events on the field prove him wrong. The defending team intercepts the ball, meaning Nicky has now lost an additional $10,000. His total losses have climbed to $15,000, and as he withdraws the money to pay Leon, his movements show signs of genuine concern about this downward spiral. However, rather than accepting his losses and walking away as wisdom would dictate, Nicky allows anger and wounded pride to override his judgment. He pauses, his jaw tightening with determination, and announces he wants to bet $50,000 on the next play. Jess reacts with shock to this reckless escalation, but Nicky's face has hardened with stubborn resolve. Fortune continues to abandon him, and he loses this substantial wager as well, forcing him to hand over an additional $50,000 to Leon. Jess urgently pleads with him to stop this madness before he loses everything they have, but Nicky's emotional state has deteriorated to the point where rational decision-making seems impossible. His anger at losing and his ego refusing to accept defeat combine to push him toward even more irresponsible choices. Without pausing to think clearly, he declares he will bet $100,000 on the next outcome. Leon responds with mocking laughter, making sarcastic comments about how much money Nicky apparently possesses. Rather than responding verbally to this provocation, Nicky simply reaches into his bag and throws a massive bundle of cash onto the table between them, his actions speaking louder than any words could. The sight of such wealth intensifies Leon's excitement and eagerness to continue. This time, Nicky bets that the next pass attempt will be intercepted by the defense, but the quarterback successfully completes the throw to his receiver. Nicky has now lost several $100,000 in total, and panic begins creeping into his consciousness as he struggles to understand how he became trapped in this catastrophic situation. Jess watches in disbelief, unable to comprehend why Nicky continues making these destructive choices. But the nightmare has not yet reached its conclusion. Nicky, now completely consumed by desperation and irrationality, announces he has $1 million remaining in his possession and proposes they wager this entire amount on a single outcome. However, this final bet will not concern the football game at all. Instead, they will decide the matter through a simple card draw. Highest card wins. Leon, who has been winning consistently throughout this entire sequence, now views Nicky as nothing more than a human ATM machine dispensing endless cash. He agrees enthusiastically to this final wager. Leon draws his card first and reveals a 5. This means Nicky needs only to draw any card higher than 5 to win back everything he has lost. With more than half the deck consisting of cards that would give him victory, the odds heavily favor Nicky for the first time all afternoon. Nicky reaches for the deck with visible confidence, his fingers closing around a card which he then flips over with theatrical flourish. But when the card's face becomes visible, showing a 3, Jess literally falls from her chair in shock and dismay. When this sequence of betting began, Nicky had intended to risk perhaps $4,000 at most, a modest sum that would make the afternoon more exciting without creating genuine financial jeopardy. But through a cascading series of poor decisions and emotional reactions, he has now lost more than $1 million, an amount equivalent to approximately 9 crore rupees. The magnitude of this loss leaves him speechless, standing there with nothing to say in his defense or explanation. He simply takes Jess's hand and begins walking toward the exit, his shoulders slumped in defeat and shame. Leon, rather than showing any compassion or restraint in victory, continues taunting Nicky even as he attempts to leave. He calls out mockingly that this outcome represents the inevitable result when an amateur tries to compete against a master. These words stop Nicky in his tracks. He turns around and makes one final proposition. He will bet $2 million on an outcome that seems absolutely impossible to predict. Nicky challenges Leon to select any player currently on the field, viewing them through binoculars so the choice is completely random. If Nicky can correctly guess that randomly selected player's jersey number, he wins. If he cannot, Leon collects another $2 million. Leon responds with confusion and suspicion to this bizarre proposal. The idea seems absolutely insane, an act of self-destruction by someone who has completely lost touch with reality. He also begins wondering if Nicky has somehow found a way to cheat, though he cannot imagine how such cheating would be possible. To address this concern directly, Nicky announces a modification to the challenge. He will not make the guess himself. Instead, Jess will provide the number. This revelation drains the color from Jess's face as anger and confusion compete for dominance in her expression. She cannot understand what Nicky is doing or why he would involve her in what appears to be certain failure. What possible chance exists that she could randomly state a number and have it match the jersey of whichever player Leon selects from among the dozens on the field? She protests and attempts to leave, but Leon's security personnel physically prevent her departure. After a brief altercation and some tense moments, Jess forces herself to calm down enough to listen to Nicky's instructions. He tells her simply to look around the stadium and the playing field, then state whatever number feels right to her, whatever number seems to belong to her in some intuitive way. Leon lifts the binoculars to his eyes and scans the field before making his selection. Then Jess takes the binoculars and begins her own examination of the field below. Jersey numbers appear everywhere she looks, dozens of different numbers creating a bewildering array of possibilities. How could anyone possibly guess which one Leon selected? As her eyes continue scanning, she suddenly notices a familiar face among the players. In that instant, Nicky's cryptic instruction suddenly makes perfect sense. He told her to choose the number that feels like hers, the number that belongs to her. There on the field, wearing jersey number 55, stands Farhad, someone she knows, someone connected to Nicky. Understanding floods through her consciousness. This entire afternoon has been an elaborate performance, a carefully choreographed sequence designed to reach precisely this moment. She speaks the number 55 aloud, and Leon checks through his binoculars before his face goes pale with shock. The player he selected does indeed wear number 55. Leon stands frozen in disbelief while Jess's mind races to comprehend how Nicky could have known from the very beginning which player Leon would select from among so many possibilities. But such questions can wait for later. The important fact is that Nicky has won the bet, collecting $2 million in winnings, which more than compensates for all his previous losses. He departs the stadium carrying 2 large bags stuffed with cash, leaving behind a stunned Leon who still cannot process what just happened. Once they are safely in their car and driving away from the stadium, Nicky explains the full scope of the plan to Jess. He reveals that he has been studying and tracking Leon for an extended period. Leon enjoys a reputation in wealthy social circles as someone with a severe gambling addiction, a man who cannot resist making bets when opportunities present themselves. Nicky's team constructed this entire elaborate scheme around exploiting that weakness. From the moment Leon stepped out of his hotel room that morning, they began implanting the number 55 into his subconscious mind through repeated exposure. The security guard's lapel pin displayed the number 55. Billboards and signs along his route to the stadium featured the same number prominently. The number was not merely shown to him but called to his attention verbally through casual conversation and ambient sounds. By the time Leon entered the stadium, his mind had been primed to gravitate toward that specific number even though he remained completely unaware of this manipulation. Jess listens to this explanation with growing admiration and astonishment. She is thoroughly impressed by the complexity of the planning and the psychological sophistication involved in executing such a con. However, this scene represents only one chapter in a much longer story, and to understand how Nicky and Jess reached this point, we must travel backward in time to events that occurred several days before the stadium confrontation. The narrative rewinds to show us Nicky lying on a bed in a nondescript room with a gun pressed against his head. The man holding the weapon looks dangerous and deadly serious, creating an atmosphere of genuine threat. Jess sits nearby, and based on the context, it becomes clear that she has only recently met Nicky. Someone has set a trap for him, and that trap has now been sprung. Yet despite the lethal danger of his situation, Nicky's face shows no fear whatsoever. He speaks calmly and directly to the armed man, stating that he possesses no money worth stealing. If the man wants to shoot, he should proceed and get it over with. The armed man studies Nicky's reactions carefully, and recognition dawns in his eyes. He suddenly understands who he is dealing with. This is no ordinary person who can be frightened or intimidated. This man is a player in the game, a professional thief whose skills and experience likely exceed those of the people who set this trap. The armed man's assessment proves absolutely correct. Nicky has built a reputation as an extraordinarily talented con artist who executes sophisticated thefts with remarkable cleanliness and precision, leaving behind no evidence or traces that could lead to his identification or capture. Jess had been the one who lured Nicky to this room, setting him up for what was supposed to be an easy robbery. But instead of being angry with her, Nicky recognizes something valuable in her performance. He sees natural talent in the way she manipulated him and constructed the trap. When the armed man departs and the immediate danger passes, Nicky turns to Jess with a proposition. He tells her that she possesses a gift, an innate ability to deceive and manipulate people that could be developed into a lucrative career if properly trained and refined. With the right guidance, she could live comfortably for the rest of her life without ever needing to work a conventional job. Nicky explains that deception and theft run in his family like an inherited trait passed down through generations. His father engaged in this profession, as did his grandfather before him. He himself has been perfecting these skills since childhood. Every trick, every technique, every psychological manipulation represents a game he has mastered through years of practice and study. Jess wastes no time in making her decision. She immediately offers him money and asks him to become her teacher, to show her how to operate at his level of sophistication. Nicky sees no reason to refuse this request or delay the beginning of her education. Even as they prepare to leave the room, he demonstrates his abilities by stealing a ring from her finger without her noticing the theft. Before Jess can fully process how he accomplished this, her watch has also vanished from her wrist. When she thinks to check her handbag, she discovers that her wallet has been removed during the brief moment she was distracted by the missing watch. After this impressive display, Nicky explains the fundamental requirements of their profession: speed and precision in hand movements, perfect timing, and a certain stylishness in execution that prevents observers from noticing what is happening right in front of their eyes. That day concludes with Nicky offering nothing more than a simple goodbye, leaving Jess to absorb the lesson she has just witnessed. Several months pass before their paths cross again. Jess tracks Nicky down in New Orleans, where he has established operations and begun assembling a new team for an upcoming series of cons. This reunion serves as a test. Nicky wants to evaluate whether Jess has developed her skills sufficiently to warrant inclusion in his professional crew. When she expresses her desire to join them, Nicky sends her into the field with one of his team members to assess her abilities under real conditions. This represents Jess's first practical assignment, her opportunity to prove she can operate effectively outside of controlled practice scenarios. She carries a map and begins approaching tourists, asking for directions in a friendly, harmless manner. While she occupies their attention with innocent conversation, her companion moves behind the distracted tourists and expertly lifts a camera lens from someone's bag. Then another team member deliberately bumps into a pedestrian, creating a moment of confusion and physical contact, during which Jess smoothly removes the man's wallet from his pocket. Her confidence grows with each successful theft. She manages to extract a wallet from a woman's purse using chopsticks as tools, demonstrating increasing creativity in her methods. The operations proceed so smoothly that none of the victims suspect anything is amiss. Nicky observes all of this from his vantage point atop a nearby building, monitoring her performance through binoculars. Satisfied with what he sees, he instructs his team to leave Jess alone for the next phase. She must now operate independently without the safety net of nearby assistance. He assigns her to a more complex operation involving sophisticated technology. Using specialized contact lenses, team members can observe the cards held by opponents in poker games, giving them an insurmountable advantage that appears entirely natural. They have also developed an efficient system for stealing credit card information. A card is lifted from someone's wallet or purse and quickly passed to a teammate who possesses a device that copies all its data within seconds. The card then returns to its owner's pocket before they notice its absence. By the time anyone detects unusual charges on their account, the thieves have already drained significant funds. Another component of their operation involves a fake ATM machine placed in a high-traffic location. Whenever someone uses this machine to withdraw cash, it not only dispenses the requested money but also secretly records their PIN code. Farhad periodically removes this machine and extracts all the stolen data it has collected. The team organizes all captured credit card information into categories based on credit limits and account balances. They use these stolen credentials to purchase luxury goods which are then resold through underground markets. Finally, they sell the raw data itself to criminal organizations that will exploit the information for their own purposes. One afternoon, Jess notices a beautiful necklace among the stolen merchandise and cannot resist trying it on. But Nicky immediately orders her to remove it, his tone sharp with disapproval. He explains firmly that everything they acquire through their operations must be sold for profit. Nothing can be kept for personal use or enjoyment. This represents a fundamental rule of their profession, maintaining emotional distance from the objects and money they steal. Jess has never witnessed criminal operations on this scale and sophistication before. Standing in the midst of all this stolen property creates feelings she has never previously experienced. The following day, Jess and Farhad venture into an affluent neighborhood to execute another carefully planned operation. Farhad suddenly collapses on the sidewalk as though experiencing a medical emergency, and Jess immediately begins screaming for help, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. This manufactured crisis serves as a distraction that occupies people's minds and redirects their focus away from their personal belongings. While wealthy residents rush to offer assistance or simply stop to observe the commotion, other team members circulate through the gathering crowd and systematically steal wallets, jewelry, and other valuables. Once they have collected their targets, the entire crew disappears into a waiting ambulance that drives away before anyone realizes they have been robbed. The plan executes so flawlessly that the victims don't even know a crime has occurred. That evening, the entire team gathers to celebrate their successful week of operations. Nicky offers praise and congratulations to everyone because their combined efforts have generated $12 million in just 7 days of work. The next day will mark the end of this particular campaign, with all team members going their separate ways until the next operation. They destroy all documents and evidence related to their activities, and Nicky assures everyone that their shares of the profits will appear in their bank accounts within a few days through carefully laundered channels. Throughout all of this, Jess has been developing romantic feelings for Nicky that grow stronger with each passing day. She has convinced herself that she represents something special to him, that he included her in these operations because of personal affection rather than purely professional considerations. But when everything concludes and the team prepares to disband, Nicky's true perspective becomes painfully clear. He hands Jess $80,000 in cash as her share of the profits and then says goodbye, offering nothing more than a professional parting. Jess stares at him with tears forming in her eyes, her heart breaking as she realizes the truth. She had genuinely fallen in love with him, but for Nicky, she was never anything more than another member of his crew, a useful asset with valuable skills. Adding to her emotional pain is the bitter realization that $80,000 represents an insultingly small portion of the $12 million they collectively earned, especially given that Nicky personally walked away with over $1 million. But in Nicky's world, emotions have no place and sentiment represents weakness. Jess has now witnessed his true nature, and that knowledge brings more pain than any physical wound could inflict. Approximately 3 years pass before we encounter these characters again. A racing car pulls into a service station, and moments later we observe Nicky arriving at the same location. He meets with Garriga, the owner of a professional racing team. Garriga's technical division has developed a revolutionary new algorithm called EXR that provides significant advantages in race strategy and performance. However, they want to improve it further and simultaneously prevent competing teams from accessing it. To accomplish these goals, they have hired Nicky to execute a sophisticated con. The plan involves Nicky pretending to be the team's chief engineer. He will then stage a very public and dramatic fight with Garriga, making it appear that Nicky has become disgruntled and angry with his employer. This manufactured conflict will make Nicky appear available for recruitment by rival teams. When competitors approach him seeking revenge or advantage, Nicky will sell them what they believe is the genuine EXR system, but which is actually a fake version that will damage their performance rather than enhance it. Meanwhile, Garriga's team will continue using the real system, virtually guaranteeing their victory. In exchange for executing this deception, Nicky will receive €1 million, plus he gets to keep whatever money he extracts from rival teams when selling them the fake system. Nicky views this assignment as almost laughably simple, the kind of con he could execute successfully even if awakened from deep sleep. However, Garriga's head of security does not share his employer's confidence in Nicky's trustworthiness. He confronts Nicky directly and issues a blunt threat: if Nicky attempts any betrayal or deviation from the agreed plan, he will put a bullet in Nicky's chest without hesitation. Nicky dresses in formal attire that evening and heads to a party where he intends to stage the planned confrontation with Garriga in front of numerous witnesses from the racing world. But his carefully prepared plan encounters an unexpected complication when Jess makes a dramatic entrance down the staircase wearing an elegant red dress, walking directly to Garriga and embracing him affectionately. Seeing Jess with another man after 3 years of separation hits Nicky like a physical blow. His mind reels with jealousy and confusion. The woman he once worked with, and perhaps cared for more than he wanted to admit, is now romantically involved with the very man who hired him for this job. Jess approaches Nicky and speaks to him privately, explaining that she is no longer involved in criminal activities and whatever happened between them 3 years ago no longer matters. She also mentions that Garriga knows nothing about her previous relationship with Nicky, and she strongly suggests they keep it that way to avoid complications. These revelations push Nicky past his breaking point. He grabs a glass of vodka and drains it in a single swallow, his emotions spiraling out of control. The confrontation he was supposed to stage as performance becomes genuine anger fueled by jealousy and wounded pride. He picks a massive fight with Garriga in front of all the assembled guests, making such a scene that security personnel forcibly eject him from the party. However, this outcome actually serves his purposes perfectly. Representatives from rival racing teams witness the entire confrontation and now believe Nicky is genuinely angry and available for recruitment. One of them slips Nicky a business card as he is being escorted out. The following morning, Nicky meets with the owner of a competing McLaren racing team. He gets straight to business, stating that he can provide access to the EXR system for €3 million. The team owner, whose wealth from racing leaves him unconcerned about such sums, agrees without negotiation. Nicky arranges a demonstration on a test track, and when the owner witnesses the system's performance, his face lights up with excitement and greed. Nicky promises to deliver all the software within 48 hours. Meanwhile, Jess encounters Farhad on the street. Nicky has deliberately sent him to speak with her. Farhad tells Jess that Nicky's abandonment of her 3 years ago was not a choice but a necessity driven by circumstances beyond his control. He insists that Nicky still loves her and has never forgotten her. As proof, Farhad presents Jess with a box containing the same necklace she admired years ago. Whether it is genuine or counterfeit hardly matters, the gesture itself carries enormous emotional weight. Seeing this necklace causes Jess's carefully constructed emotional defenses to crumble. Despite saying she cannot trust Nicky, her eyes betray feelings that never truly died. The day of the transaction arrives quickly. Nicky delivers the software to the McLaren team owner and receives €3 million from a large security guard who handles the cash exchange. But Nicky's nature compels him toward risk and audacity rather than simple, safe profits. He secretly sells copies of the exact same software to every other racing team as well, collecting millions of euros in handshake deals disguised as friendly greetings. Until the actual race begins, no team will realize that everyone possesses identical systems, making the advantage worthless. That evening, rather than fleeing immediately with his ill-gotten gains, Nicky sends a message to Jess suggesting they run away together. He waits at the designated meeting spot, but she does not appear. Just as he is about to give up and leave alone, Jess finally arrives. But she has not come to run away with him, she has come as Garriga's spy. She has discovered that Nicky sold the real EXR system rather than the fake version as agreed, keeping all the profits rather than splitting them with Garriga. This betrayal means Nicky has no interest in the €1 million Garriga offered, he has made far more by selling the genuine article to multiple buyers. Now understanding the full scope of Nicky's deception, Jess and Garriga's security team spring their trap. They deliberately cause a violent car accident that leaves both Nicky and Jess injured and disoriented. When they regain consciousness, they find themselves bound and helpless in a warehouse, with all of Nicky's cash piled in front of an enraged Garriga. He is absolutely furious about Nicky's betrayal. Garriga invested €40 million in developing the EXR system, and now that investment is completely worthless because every competing team possesses the same advantage. The aspect Garriga cannot understand is how Nicky managed to steal the real software when he should only have had access to the fake version. When Nicky refuses to answer, Garriga strikes Jess brutally in the face, and her breath stops, her body going limp. Seeing the woman he loves apparently dead or dying breaks something fundamental in Nicky. He confesses everything through tears and anguish. He explains that he exploited Jess's lingering feelings for him, giving her the necklace as a supposed token of affection. But that necklace contained a sophisticated chip that transmitted data wirelessly. When Jess wore it near Garriga's computer as he accessed the EXR system, the chip captured all passwords and data, allowing Nicky to steal everything remotely. Hearing this confession shatters Jess's heart completely. Tears stream down her face as she realizes she was nothing but a tool to him, her emotions manipulated for profit. But Garriga and his associates begin laughing at Nicky's story. They enjoyed the tale but do not believe it because they know something Nicky does not. Jess was never actually Garriga's girlfriend. She was working with Garriga to con Nicky, her supposed affection merely part of the scheme. Jess admits this openly, revealing that she only pretended to love Garriga so she could steal his valuable watch collection. Now both Nicky and Jess are trapped, each realizing they were trying to con the other while being conned themselves. Garriga's patience has reached its end. He demands to know how Nicky actually stole the software, and before Nicky can begin explaining, Garriga's head of security, the man who had threatened Nicky at the beginning, pulls his gun and fires. The bullet strikes Nicky directly in the chest, and he collapses. Garriga's face goes white with horror. He begins panicking, screaming at his security chief that money can be replaced but murder will destroy his life and send him to prison. He immediately orders the security guard out of the warehouse and flees the scene, wanting no association with this killing. Jess sobs uncontrollably, believing she has just watched the man she loves die in front of her. But the security guard calmly tells her there is no need for fear or grief. He is actually Nicky's father, his real biological father, and everything that just happened was staged. He deliberately fired the bullet to strike beside Nicky's heart rather than through it, creating the appearance of a fatal wound without actually killing him. He quickly seals the wound with medical tape, removes excess blood with a needle, and stabilizes the air pressure in Nicky's chest cavity. Within moments, Nicky's eyes flutter open. He is alive, though in pain. This final con was extremely risky and could easily have resulted in actual death, but it succeeded in its purpose. They have all the money Garriga brought, and the three of them escape together before anyone can discover the deception. Nicky had actually been an orphan, raised and trained by this man who taught him every skill he possesses. The fundamental rule was always to avoid emotional attachment, but despite this teaching, Nicky has genuinely fallen in love with Jess. His father takes all the cash and leaves them on the side of the road, meaning Nicky has once again ended up with nothing. However, as Nicky and Jess make their way to a hospital to treat his genuine injuries, he notices something in the car. Garriga's watch, worth €200,000, now rests in Jess's hand. They look at each other and share a smile of understanding and partnership. With their combined skills and talent for deception and sleight of hand, they will never go hungry or lack resources no matter where in the world they find themselves.